All right. So can you talk about those amendments that you and Dr. Ball tried to get passed
Yeah.
in this bill?
So, actually, I wish I had the amendments in front of me, but the amendments would have put in more process. They would have made sure there was protections for those historic properties. One of them in particular said if you're going to sell off the property, if the county is going to, instead of doing what they said they're going to do, is just demolish the property, if they're going to sell those properties off, then they have to be preserved, but that amendment failed.
Why were those amendments important to you?
The amendments are important to me. I was concerned about the plan anyway. I mean, my concern about the plan is that it still leaves 4 to 6 feet of water on Main Street. We're demolishing historic buildings, and I don't think we've considered some of the other options that would actually, they would actually take all of the water. Well, it would leave negligible amount of water on Main Street. So I think there were a number of things. I thought those were some protections that might be helpful and would add an extra level of review and some more public process. I think there's been a lot of public process, but there hasn't been around the demolishing of the buildings, and I think people are very concerned about those.
Do you think this was not a good enough start? And then after the 5 years, perhaps putting in additional processes to ensure that it gets better?
Can you repeat that question?
Do you think this is not a good enough start?
So this isn't really a start. This is a $60 to $70 million plan. So I think that's the problem. This isn't sort of an incremental piece of it. This isn't a small little piece of the puzzle and then we'll figure it out. This is actually a very huge, large plan. I think if we'd had some more time to work it through, I think we'd had a couple months to go through to look at the tunnel boring options and some of the other options, I think all of that information would have come out. So it's not really a start. I think you can't call a $60 to $70 million project a start.
So you wanted to see more details for that big a chunk of money?
I wanted to see more detail, but really that is not my main concern. My main concern is that you have 4 to 6 feet of water left on Main Street. And that concerns me. My concern is that could give people a false sense of security. It could lead to a very dangerous situation. 4 to 6 feet of water, even 2 feet of water running down Main Street with some amount of speed is dangerous. And that scares me, and I want to make sure that people are ready to return to Main Street. That's a very important piece of it. And I want to make sure people are safe, and I'm concerned that will give a false sense of security and that we haven't evaluated the other options.
What are some of the other options that you think were not evaluated?
Well, one of the options that people discussed was the tunnel boring option. And so there has been a lot of discussion about that. That was briefly looked at and dismissed by the county because they said it was too expensive. We heard all sorts of different estimates of the cost of that. I think the latest we heard was about $20 million, which is actually less than the current plan. But we also heard that it wasn't looked at because it was $100 million or $120 million. And I don't believe that is the case. But at any rate, I think it's really important that we have that discussion and that we take a look at that. And I don't know why we couldn't take a month or 2 months to get that right.
Anything else?
No, I'm hopeful that they'll just continue studying this and maybe they'll look at those other options, even though they've passed this plan. I really want it to be safe for all the residents and for the merchants and for the customers that come down there. We need it to succeed. So.
I'm sorry, did you give us your name on camera?
I don't think I did. I'm Councilwoman Jen Terrassa.
Spell your first and last name.
It's Jen, Jen, Terrassa, Terrasa.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is your light good? Your light good? That one's really bright. You want to kill yours and see if these work? And don't make faces at me, lady. Told you not to do that.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling a little relieved and honestly a little excited. This is going to be a great change for Ellicott City. It provides a whole new future for the town and for its people. So,
Councilwoman Terrassa said one of her main concerns is that there would still be maybe 4 feet of water down there at the bottom, and it
Right.
gives people a false sense of security. Is that true?
well, in a massive storm like we've received before, there is a likelihood there'll be still some water on the street, but there are important elements. We are talking about 12 to 15 feet. Some people have been stuck on the fact that we're going from 8 to 4 to 6. We're not. The floods that hit, particularly on the lower end, were to the second floors of the buildings. So that's not 8 feet. That's 12 to 15, and in some cases potentially more. The other element that we're talking about is the speed of the water. We are reducing it by, in particular on the lower end, by almost 80%, the speed of the water. That is the most devastating element. So with floodproofing, that can handle water in the 4-foot range for sure, and then the speed is going to absolutely take care of the majority of the damage. The other thing is, people have forgotten, this is not just the plan and we're done. We have 18 projects. We've moved 6 of them, fast forwarded them to the next 5-year period. But we have other projects as we're implementing these that can contribute to reducing the water on the street. So I don't have a concern there. We are making a significant and immediate impact. By this time next year, certainly by the end of next calendar year, we'll be seeing dramatic improvements to safety on the street.
And what steps have been taken to ensure that the historic buildings are preserved?
Well, the county executive has put forward a committee of local folks who have preservation backgrounds, who have been residents and community members for decades. So they're going to look at all the structures that are considered for removal. They're going to inventory them, look at opportunities for either moving the buildings or removing historic elements of those buildings. So it is embedded in what we're trying to do in the plan, as well as the Historic Preservation Commission and other elements as we go through these processes to look at those buildings to make sure that as much of the history can be preserved. And I will tell you, the stories are not going to end. The history in those buildings is not going to go away if the buildings are removed. The stories will continue. We will continue to tell the history of this town. Those buildings weren't there when it started. Sometime in the 1800s, many of those went up. Some of those buildings went up in the 2000s. So the bottom line is, of those 10 buildings, really only one is historically significant, and that one's slated to be moved.
The second bill did not pass, correct? Even though it had 3 votes?
Right. There were 2 funding bills. One of them was an emergency bill, which is because we're moving from our emergency contingency fund, basically. And so it's $1.5 million. It doesn't have a material impact on the plan.
So how will you come up with that money without that bill?
Well, I think the answer is that there's a number of ways. We've already seen in just the last few weeks a savings of about $250,000 on some of the projects we've already put into place. There may be some additional savings as we go further in the engineering analysis. As well, the state has come through with some money, but they're in the same situation we are. This happened right after they passed the budget, so they're committing to looking at different projects and seeing, like us, we know we can't spend the money, say, for the firehouse this year, so they're looking for projects like that at the state level that may not be fully completed this year, and money might be able to be reallocated to our projects here. So I'm not concerned about the $1.5 million. Also understand there's already money in the existing budget addressing these plans and these projects. So the combination there is, again, it might have a minor impact of a couple of projects moving out a month or two beyond the current fiscal year.
In the firehouse, some of your colleagues felt like it was important to keep that money there. Why did you feel like that wasn't necessary?
Well, because I talked to the chief of the fire department, actually the chief that's left and the chief that came in, and with members of the fire department, and they were unequivocal in saying this will not have an impact on how they deliver service. We are estimating that there might be a 2 or 3 month delay potentially, but we do not have the land to build the building, and we're working to get that completed. It's out of our hands. It's a state property, and they're moving as fast as they can, and we're ready to go as soon as they are. But the bottom line is, again, it won't have a material impact, and we've talked to the people who know best, and that's our fire department.
And will this plan reduce the possibility of further tragedy?
That is absolutely the reason why we've moved forward this way. The idea primarily is life safety. The other benefit, honestly, is there are many people who were here tonight. They own businesses, they live in town, that are making decisions based on this plan moving forward, whether or not they're staying or whether or not they're coming back. There are businesses who have already come back that are counting on this plan to help rejuvenate the town. If we didn't move this forward, I am confident we'd be looking at a ghost town with some historic buildings and no people. What we're going to do with this plan is keep this a vibrant town. I will tell you, Ellicott City is a functional town with a lot of cool history. It is not an historic town like Harpers Ferry for people to come and look at. People live here, work here. This is a vibrant part of our community, and that's what we're trying to preserve. Any other questions, folks?
Oh, give us your
Oh, I'm John Weinstein, JONWEINSTEIN. I'm Howard County Councilman for District 1, including historic Ellicott City. Great, Albert, thank you.
You guys good?
asking me.
Oh. I got it. Okay. Can you say and spell your first and last name?
Sure, it's Nicholas Redding, NICHOLAS REDDING.
And your title?
is Executive Director of Preservation Maryland.
So tell me about your concerns with this project.
So Preservation Maryland, first and foremost, is concerned about life safety in the historic district. I mean, we care about historic buildings, but people are what make buildings matter. And this plan that was funded tonight, at least partially, does not make Ellicott City safe enough. It takes floodwaters by the county's own admission down to 4 to 6 feet at a velocity that still would knock people over and still take you downstream. It's a plan that at 5'6" I wouldn't be able to survive.
What would you say to people who would say that, okay, it's 6 feet, but 6 feet's better than 12 feet?
6 feet's better than 12 feet, but we think a few inches is even better, and that's what the county's own engineering plan suggested is possible with tunnels. And this evening, you heard there was an amendment offered to study tunnel boring, and that amendment was voted down. And we think that that was a really poor decision on the part of the Howard County Council.
Is this over for you? I mean, they voted, it passed, or will you seek other means to try to find another flood mitigation project?
Preservationists play the long game, right? We see the value of history, and I think as historians we recognize we're going to be judged by history, and so this is far from over. We've been in existence since 1931 and have cared about Ellicott City since the beginning. We'll continue to care about them, and we're going to be releasing an engineering review of our own in the next few days that calls into question some of the decisions that were made. And we also look forward to working with the new Howard County Council, because the folks that were up there on the dais tonight either are moving on to different positions or are not facing re-election. And so we have a new council coming in, we have a new day, there's funding in place, but this is not a done deal, and I think the preservation community and the majority of Howard County residents expect us to find alternatives to demolition. There's a better path forward.
What will that report, I mean, I don't know how far along it is, but what will that kind of say? Will it talk about those tunnels and alternatives to demolitions?
Yeah, so I think the report that we've worked on with a major engineering firm is a review. It's a third-party, unbiased review of the county's plan and looking for opportunities and areas of either further study or things perhaps that engineering firm didn't get right or perhaps overlooked. It's not to suggest that they did anything wrong or that it was malicious, but just like in medical practice, it's good to get a second opinion sometimes. And so we wanted to provide that because we think we have to get it right here, and a rushed plan, a fast plan, doesn't always make it a good plan. Thank you.
Because I came a
Sure,
second.
sure. It's Nicholas Redding, Redding, and the Executive Director of Preservation Maryland.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.